Okay, 56a, 6 lines from the top. Um, so we were talking about before we got off on some tangents about property markers and so on. Well, part of that discussion was we're talking about claiming the property of the property which has no yarshim, which has no owner. So if specifically if a ger passes away and that ger had not married, and he's deemed to be without relatives because of the nature of how we view Gerus. He's like a new person, and he has no relatives, and he dies. So what happens to his property? So um, so we said if there's a border, let's say there are two properties side by side that both belong to the ger. If there's no border marker between them, then they're considered one property. And so someone who exercises a chazaka over any part of it acquires the whole property. If it's two separate properties, they're divided by a border marker, then they have to be acquired by two separate acts of chazaka. If you perform an act of chazaka in one property, that doesn't affect the other one because it's a separate lot. It's marked by a border. Um, so let's see. Now, is a border marker the only way that we can divide that we consider his various lots to be combined? What if there's no border marker? So do we, how do you determine what is the piece of the property that you are acquiring, or is it anything that is contiguous? Perishori Marinos Mishma, or Marinos explained it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Shenikre Sel Shmo. No, you don't necessarily need a border marker. If everybody calls this, Joe's lot or Joe's property, Joe's field, then as much of the property as is covered by that name, Joe's field, is considered one lot and can be all acquired by one act of chazaka. Hechidame. How does, let's explain this a little. Amarav Papa de Karole Begargusa de Planya. They, like I said, they call it Joe Gargusa is actually a water hole, apparently. So it's like anything that is irrigated by that well is called in the popular parlance, that's Joe's Wells field. Okay, so anything that is called that way is just expanding with an example on how you determine what is covered by Joe's field. The Yosef Ravacha bar Azia Kamed Ravasi. Ravacha was sitting before Ravasi. V'Yosef V'Kamer Mishmeit Ravasi bar Chanina. He quoted the other Ravasi. Chatzuva mafsik benichse hager. A chatzav, which is that plant that we saw before that was used as a border marker, that is kind of interrupts, that divides, that determines the boundary of a lot that you can occupy if it's the property of the estate of a ger. My chatzuva. Now, what is this chatzuva? What is this plant? Amar Vida Marav Shevo. Tichem Yehoshua, Shabo. Amar Yehoshua Marav, or Yehoshua is the name of Rav. Shabo Tichem Yehoshua Yisrael Saretz. This is a plant that Yehoshua, when he was dividing up the land to the various tribes and families and so on, he used this plant as a border marker. V'yamar Rav Yehuda Marav, or he also said, Lamana Yeshua Ella Ayoros Ha'omdidos Ella Gvulim. The book of Yehoshua, the Sefer Yehoshua, only enumerates the names of places. It lists many, many names of places that were conquered by Yehoshua and the various battles and so on. The only cities that are listed are the ones on the boundaries, on the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Amar Yidom Shmuel, Kol She'arahu HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Moshe Chai B'Maser. Whatever God showed Moshe, when Moshe at the end of his life, God told him to go to the top of Har Nevo and see the whole land of Israel that he was going to not see or not enter, but send the people into. So anything that was within Moshe's eyesight that God showed him from the top of that mountain, that defines, or that, I don't know if that defines, but that is considered Eretz Yisrael for the purposes of Truma and Maser. Lafukemai. So what does that mean? Like, what did God not show him? What land are we referring to that was not part of Eretz Yisrael from Aser? Lafuke Keni Knizi Kadmoni. That's the lands of these are three nations or chieftains, chief or fiefdoms that were mentioned in the promise to Abraham Avinu, but were not included in the Sheba Amimim, in the seven nations that Yoshua conquered. So those lands, the Keni, Kenizi, and Kadmoni, were not included in Eretz Yisrael. Tani Rameir Omer, Naftucha Arba'a V'Shalma. The places that were excluded are different. They're Naftucha, Arava, and Shalma. Rabbi Omer Harseir Ammon and Moav. And Rabbi says no, it's the places that are excluded are Seir, Ammon, and Moav. Rabbi Shimon Omer Ardiskis, Asya, Vaspamia. So I don't know what conclusions you can draw from these different places. Like some of them are close neighbors, like Harseir, Ammon, and Moav, or bordering countries to Eretz Yisrael. On the other hand, if Asia means Asia and Aspamia means Spain, which I'm not certain that that's the case, but if that's what it means, then it's much further away. Similarly, Arva is probably maybe means the Arabian Peninsula, but it's unclear, of course, what these names actually mean.
Well, what does the Rashbam really mean when he says Kula Hani Tanai Beperish Tekeni Kenizi Kalmoni Pligi?
That they're all commenting on the original statement that what were the areas excluded from what Hashem showed Moshe. So the original statement was Keni what was it? Kenizi Kenizi and Kadmoni, and these other statements are meant to argue with that. No, those weren't the ones, but rather the ones that they mentioned.
Okay.
I think the reason that Rashbam mentions that is that the other views are included are introduced, with the word Tanya, which usually means a new topic, right? Or ordinarily the Gemara would just say so and so says A, Rameir says B, Rabbi Yehuda says C, right? But if it says so and so says A, and then Tanya, we have a brisa. Usually that introduces some kind of a question, but Rashbam is just saying that in this case it just means these are different views of the same different opposing views.
Okay.
Back to the topic of the 3-year chazaka. Mishnah says if two witnesses testify that the occupier used the property for 3 years, now the Eidim are found to be Zomim. So as you know, Zomim is a specific case of contradiction of testimony in which you say two more witnesses come and say about the original witnesses, you can't possibly give that testimony because you were with us at that time in a different place. So you couldn't have seen what you say you saw. So, and the rule for Eidim Zomim is that they are punished by Asisem Lo Kasher Zomam Lasas Lachiv. They have to suffer the same consequences that they were falsely trying to incur on the litigant. So what is the punishment of the Eidim Zomim here? Mishalmin Lo Sakol, you pay the original owner. Like you were trying to testify that Shimon occupied Ruvain's land and he had a chazaka for 3 years. It wasn't true. You're found to be an Eid Zomim. So then you have to compensate Ruvain, the original owner of the land, the true owner of the land, by paying him the value of the field. Okay, here comes some interesting cases. What if you have two witnesses that say in year 1, Shimon occupied the land? Two other witnesses come and say in year 2, Shimon occupied the land, and two other witnesses come and say in year 3, Shimon occupied the land. So each pair of Eidim by themselves, the effect is nothing, right? If I say you occupied the land for 1 year, there's no consequence to that, right? It's the three pairs together that establish a chain of 3 unbroken years for a chazaka. Now, what if all these Eidim were found to be Zomim. So Mishal Sheen Beinehan. So you split it in three, right? In other words, the field is worth $3,000. So every pair of Eidim pays $1,000, right? A third of, because each one of them is kind of causing a third of the damage, or tried to cause a third of the damage to the owner.
So in this case, I want to clarify. In this case,
Yeah.
we're saying that with 80 Zomamim, Shimon said he says he's on the field for 3 years. And we find out that that's not true. It really belongs to Reuben. And the 80 Zomim, we're trying to support him. So Reuben's going to get the field back. Now, so the 80 Zomim are we saying they have to pay the value of the field, the payroll, and so forth, which Shimon would have had? So Shimon gets away for free. He doesn't have to pay he got to use the land for 3 years, doesn't have to pay a dime. Is that what we're saying? The 80 Zomim really pay what Shimon
that is correct. I mean, yes, that's essentially correct. Like, I suppose that Reuven can sue Shimon for, having harvested his field, for the value of the value that he got from the field. But in terms of ownership, Shimon has no claim. And right, his claim evaporates.
And then, so I mean, we could have proved that in another way, but in this case, they have to pay for everything that Shimon should have paid, and Shimon got use of a field for free for 3 years.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Well, Eidim Zomim is all. There's lots of strange things with Eidim Zomim, right? You could construct a lot of weird cases, but the fact is that they have a liability that no other false witness has.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now we'll make it more complex. Shlosha achim. Let's say there are three brothers that not related to the litigants, but they're just three brothers that are part of this chain of testimonies: year one, year two, year three. So Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are brothers, and Abraham testifies about year one, Yitzchak testifies about year two, and Yaakov testifies about year three. Okay, but by themselves, they're only one aid, and that doesn't do anything for us. But Echad mitzarif imayim. But along comes Yosef, and Yosef says, you know what? Abraham and I witnessed the first year. Yitzchak and I witnessed the second year. Yaakov and I witnessed the third year. Okay, so now you have two witnesses, two pairs of witnesses, as it were. Okay, and none of the brothers are testifying. Three pairs of witnesses. Thank you. And none of the brothers are testifying together with each other, which would be invalid, right? Related people. They're each testifying about something separate. Okay. And now, so what happens? Hare elu shalosh edios, v'hen edus achas lahazama. These are three separate testimonies, but when it comes to them becoming zomimim, they're considered one testimony. What does that mean? That you divide the penalty into three again. So the first pair of witnesses is responsible for a third. So Avram is a third, and Yosef is a third. Second pair and third pair, same thing. So Yosef ends up being responsible for a half, right? A third 3 times, all right? And each of the brothers involved are responsible for a half of a third, which is a sixth each. Okay.
So Yosef is responsible for 3/6. Is that it?
That's right. Yeah.
He's a
third and a third and a third.
That's a full.
That's 3/6. No, sorry. I'm sorry. Half of a third, half of a third, and half of a third. Yes, you're right. Thank you.
So right, half a third. It's 3/6.
Right.
Right.
Which is a.
Okay. But they have to complete this whole process, right?
Yeah. Yes, correct. You have they all have to be zomin, right? The Ede Hazama come along and say, Yosef and Abraham, you were in Chicago that year. I was with you all year, and the first year. And Yosef and Yitzchak say to the second brother, to Shimon, you were in Los Angeles with us all year. Right. Like that. Okay. Masnisin Rabbi Akiva, and this mission does not follow Rabbi Akiva. The Tanya, I'm Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said, "Kishahalach Abba Chalafta Eitz Rabbi Yochanan Benuri Lumotaro," and Abba Chalafta went to Rabbi Yochanan to learn Torah. The Amrei law, but some say Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Eitz Abba Chalafta Lumotaro was the other way around, but whatever. Amar lo Harei Shachala Shana Rishon B'Shnei Shnayim. What happens in a case where Shimon occupies the land for the first year with two witnesses? Exactly our Mishnah's case, right? Three sets of witnesses for each of the 3 consecutive years. What do we do? Do we combine that into a chazaka? Amar so once at the other, harezu chazaka. Yes, that counts as a chazaka. That's like our Mishnah. Amar so he says, Afani Amar Kain. I think so too. Elash Rabbi Akiva cholik, but Rabbi Akiva says different. Rabbi Akiva Omer. What's Rabbi Akiva's source that he doesn't say this isn't even a good chazaka? Because the Torah says davar pi shnayim edim yakum davar, right? The 2 witnesses establish a thing, davar v'lo chatzi davar, but you can't have testimony over half a thing. So in other words, here the only relevant thing is a full 3-year period. So don't accept testimony for a portion of that, right? That doesn't work with that kind of edus is not valid according to Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbanan, so the rabbis, like why does the Torah use the word davar? If you say that they're trying to exclude the following, now we're dealing with testimony about the maturity of a young woman. Okay, and as you know, it's 2 pubic hairs establish her maturity so that she's considered an adult. So maybe what Rabbi Akiva or maybe what the Rabbanan are excluding with this word davar is the case where you have one pair of witnesses, one witness says she has a hair in her front and the other says in her back. So that's 2 altogether. So hi chatzi davar b'chatzi edusi. That's not just half a thing; it's also half an edus, right? You have to have. There's only one witness on each side, right? So that's not what davar excludes. We know that already. Elalamut, so there's nothing significant that was witnessed by 2 people here, by 2 witnesses. Ella lemute. So what does davar come for the rabbis to exclude? 2 witnesses witness each hair. So in that case, so the Gemara is satisfied with that. Yes, that's a case where you can say that davar v'lo chatzi davar, that edus has to be about edus has to be about a whole thing. Okay, so this is not a whole thing, but you could still say that the Rabbanan still say that doesn't apply to the case of the chazaka because they're like a whole year is a whole thing, even if it's not by itself a significant thing for chazaka. I'm not sure why you would say that this is not chasidavar, but they're testifying to something. Like each year is significant as part of the 3. Like if a woman only has 1 hair, then it's not significant at all, right? It's only in the case where there's 2 and you have testimony about each one. It's a little unclear why the rabbis see this differently.
There's a distinction here, right? That when
what is the distinction?
The woman, they're saying there's edut and there's davar. And if you have one person with 1 hair, that's neither an edut nor it's a davar. But if they have 2 that are seeing 1 hair, that's edut, right? But still, it's not a davar because it's still half.
Right, but why wouldn't you say the same thing about the chazaka case, or the 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, or first, second, and third year? Why isn't that a chatzi davar according to the Rabbanan?
It should be.
Right, but and yet, Rabbi Akiva says it is, but the Rabbanan say it's not. It's a full davar. Why is that? That's unclear to me.
I don't understand why. Yeah, why would it be a divide? Because it's still 1 year out of 3. It's not 3 years.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
unclear to me how that differs from the Nara. Amar Yehuda. I mean, Rashbam tries to explain it, but it's not. It doesn't make it any clearer to me. It's not convincing to me. Um, okay. I mean, what he tries to say is when it comes to the Nara, you're only having a view of a part of her, right? Of like part of the whole picture, right? Where it comes to the Chazaka, like you know everything that happened in that 1 year, but it's not very convincing to me. I mean, but that's the dispute. I'm Yehuda.
He wants to say
Um,
that everything for that year, but that's still not
it's
3 years.
the year is still only a partial thing. Like
Not
the
three
year by
years.
itself is not significant without the other 2 years, right? Yeah, it's unclear. I'm Yehuda. Echad omer achala chitim, v'echad omer achala sa'orin. What if you have one witness says that I witnessed 3 years of occupation of the land, in which he was like, how do I know that he was using it? Because I saw him harvesting wheat. And another single witness comes and says, I witnessed for those entire same entire 3 years that he was harvesting barley. Right. So they're both saying that there was an occupation, but there is a inherent contradiction in what they're saying, right? That there's, one is saying wheat and the other is saying barley. So it seems like somebody doesn't have his facts right. Nonetheless, we say harezu chazaka. You can combine these two into two witnesses. Um, so now it's going to emerge that uh, so yes. So Maskil Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman asks, Elmiata. What about a case where witness A says, I saw him occupying land for years 1, 3, and 5. The other witness says, I saw him occupy the land for years 2, 4, and 6. Right? So there's no witness that has 3 consecutive years. Can we combine them? So you say you can combine wheat and barley witnesses. Can you combine these two witnesses that are each testifying about a different time period, and together they add up to a stretch of more than 3 years? Yehuda says, "Achi hashta, how are you comparing these? Hasam b'shata de kamasid mar lo kamasid mar. In your case, each witness is testifying about a separate thing, right? A separate year, right? There's no there's no pair of witnesses testifying about the same event. Um, Masid Mar, Loka Masid Mar. In year 1, witness A is testifying and not witness 2. So there's only one witness for any particular detail of this extended period. But in the case of the wheat and barley, each one is testifying about the same year. Michael Mamar, what can you say? What do you want to say? That you could say that that the what the person was harvesting is not an essential element of the testimony, right? It's like I doubt, if you give that testimony, you're effectively saying, I for sure saw that Shimon was occupying the land. And it looked like barley. Okay, it looked like he was harvesting barley, but that's the barley thing is not such an essential detail. We can accept the testimony that it was definitely Shimon doing some harvesting without linking that to the veracity of the claim and what he was harvesting. So when one says wheat and one says barley, that's not such a relevant detail. The important thing is that both witnesses are saying that yes, Shimon was occupying the land. Okay, last piece of the Mishnah. The case of the three brothers, each giving testimony about one of the years, with a fourth person giving
An
testimony
interesting
about all the
commentary.
years. Yeah.
An interesting commentary. I just read, and it's not the first time, I guess, but in historical perspective, two people can be standing on the same street corner, for instance, and each one can say they saw this event happen, but they give their perspective, and it may be different, but something happened there, and no two people tell recount the same event exactly. And
Right.
that's not uncommon in history. So you can
Right.
read a historical perspective, and from one historian versus another historian, each one takes his own photograph, and they see something a little differently than the next person. So
Right.
here I'm thinking about this one person, he thinks he sees barley, another one thinks he wheat, someone else sees corn, but they're all seeing this person working in this land.
And I think it's the case in in cross-examining witnesses, the Drisha B'Chakira, that if I might be mistaken about this. I might be mixing it up with TV crime dramas or something. But I think that if every last detail is exactly coordinated, then that means something's fishy. That means they're collaborating on their testimony, and they're not good witnesses. There has to be some detail that, as you say, everybody has their own perspective, everybody has their own perception of what happened, and they're invariably going to differ somewhat. The question is it an essential detail or not, right? So the last thing the more is just an observation about the Mishnah, which we already know. Sorry, if you mind, in the case of the brothers, Harelu Shalosh Edios, these are three separate testimonies, right? And each one has to be evaluated on its own merits. In other words, you have to, cross-examine them, make sure they're not lying, whatever. But regarding Hazama, it's one thing. So if two of them are found to be Zomim and the third one is not, then that's not Hazama, right? Hazama is only if the whole testimony, meaning all 3 years, were were identified by Hazama, or were tainted by Hazama. Okay, so it's a good place to stop for today. We will pick up again tomorrow.
An interesting story I heard, the name of Reb
Yeah.
Chaim Kanievsky, about related to Tu B'Av. And
Yeah.
a person came to him, a 50-year-old man came to him, and he was never married before. And he asked for a bracha. And Reb Chaim said to him, your Zivug wasn't born yet. And he says, what? He says, what? I'm going to wait for someone 18 years, 18, I'm going to wait another 20 years until he wasn't born yet? The man went by, he didn't understand, he didn't chop what Reb Chaim had said to him. So it comes out about 3 months later. No, it's about, he met this woman about 6 months later. What happens? She had converted to Judaism 3 months before he met her.
Oh, good one.
So therefore, it
was as if she wasn't born yet.
It was a ger, so it was as if she was just born. She was, and he went back and told this story. They went back again to Reb Chaim. He said, I met this guy, a woman. She was a gioret, and we got married. We got engaged. So 3 months after she was Dayer. And Reb Chaim says, he says, I don't even know. That just came to me. I don't even know why I said that when I told you that. But it was like Ruach HaKodesh came to me. He said, I myself didn't even realize why I was saying that.
Yeah. The Gemara says that sometimes about the Niba ve'eno yodea ma Niba. Sometimes people they tell what's going to happen, and they don't even realize themselves what they're saying, and yet, their words were, as it were, put in their mouth.
Yeah.
Good story. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Good day.